check in with Cecil Hurt, the sports editor and columnist for the Tuscaloosa News. What about it, Cecil? Little Lane Kiffin maybe in Fayetteville? How do you think that would work?
Well, he seems to be the popular choice up there.
Yeah.
I do think one thing I believe, based on his short stint at Tennessee, and of course the situation at USC was different. You sort of just recruited by hopping into the BMW and rolling down the windows. Guys would follow, but you got to work harder to recruit in Fayetteville, and that's what they've got to have first. Though they've got to have somebody who's going to recruit. They've got, doesn't matter what X and O genius they bring in there. They got to have a system and commit to it, but they got to have players, better players than they have, more players than they have, and I think Lane could do that, and still be innovative on the offensive side of the ball. You wouldn't have the 5 quarterback shuffle that they had this year with Lane, I don't think. So it'd be possible. Everybody's aware of what the pluses and minuses with Lane are in terms of, where is his maturity level now in terms of maintaining a program, running a program. They do not want another, distraction. And I'm not going to compare Lane's situation and Bobby Petrino's situation. I'm just saying they don't want another distraction like that. But they certainly would welcome, I think, Lane offensively and Lane as a recruiter, which I think is what they've got to look at. And there may be other guys than Lane that can do it, but they've got to commit somebody, understand they're not winning the West next year, start building that roster up. And when it's been done at Arkansas or Ole Miss or Mississippi State, that's been part of it. Dan Mullen's team 2 years ago now, or last year at Mississippi State, where you had Simmons and Sweat and those guys. The Ole Miss teams, and again, they ended up on probation. I understand that, but with the players that they have, Kim Deechey and Treadwell and so forth, Greg Little and so forth, you got to have some guys. You don't have to have as many guys as Alabama, LSU, Auburn, but you got to have some guys. And I think Lane could do that at Arkansas.
Seems like Lane may be one of those rare guys that the later you get him in his career, the better guy, better coach you're going to get, right? It seems like a lot of these guys are hot early and then, they fade, like a Chip Kelly at UCLA. I mean, do you think that could be the case with Lane?
Could be. It could be. I think Lane's highly intelligent, and I think he's learned lessons. I think he learned a lot about the SEC, and first of all, in 1 year in Knoxville, and certainly in 3 years in Tuscaloosa, and that would be a lot of institutional knowledge that Arkansas or Ole Miss or Missouri, for that matter, could acquire with one. Now, again, whether Lane is happy in Boca, and I can see that side of it. I can see that side of it. But most coaches, they want to get back to the bigger level and be on national TV and be in a league that gives them a chance to win a national championship. Arkansas is a long, long way from doing that. I'm just saying most coaches do have that kind of dream and think they can do it. They all have self-confidence.
So rank the 3 openings in the SEC for me right now, Cecil. You've got Missouri, you've got Arkansas, you got Ole Miss. And on a lot of levels, those seem like very similar jobs. But when you get into facilities and overall commitment, I'm guessing there's some separation there between them.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways that people break that down. And of course, it depends on institutional commitment, and I think they all have an institutional commitment. Arkansas certainly has boosters that can get them whatever they need. Ole Miss probably does too. I think Missouri does too, within the parameters of, I don't know that their university priorities are quite the same, and I'm not saying they don't want to win at football. But they just remain a little bit of a odd egg in the SEC to me. But they've had success there. They've had some. They've got what should be, the only team in a state that produces some talent, has a big population base. They have some advantages there. Arkansas also the same, although Arkansas doesn't seem to produce as much talent. And then as you move further south, Ole Miss is pretty close to some players. They can get guys. Got to beat State for them. Got to keep people out of Mississippi to the extent that you can. Got to get into Memphis a little bit, but you could get players at Ole Miss. So I see the advantages and disadvantages of all three. I've always thought Arkansas was a pretty good job, other than the geographics of it, other than it being tucked up in that corner in those hills. But I've always thought that was a pretty good job, and they have really good facilities, really strong boosters, and a little bit of tradition that goes back. But and Ole Miss does too, and I guess Missouri does too, although we're not as familiar with it. But I'd lean toward Arkansas, but I'd accept the arguments for the other two. I understand that.
All right, Cecil, I'm going to guess you've laid your eyes on at least 6 Iron Bowls spanning 6 decades. That's my guess anyway. Right. I'm not going to date you or do any of that too much. We're going to be respectful of that longevity, Cecil.
Yeah.
But
I guess it'll be 6 decades next year. I guess that's where it'll be. We're a new decade next year, right?
In terms of just start to finish Iron Bowls with twists and turns and a finish on top of it, controversy, all the things there we had in the previous segment, but we still have Cecil Hurt of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com with us. And Cecil, before we were so rudely interrupted, I was going into of all the Iron Bowls that you've laid your eyes on, I'm guessing a span that reaches into 6 decades or so now. From start to finish, twists, turns, controversies, everything that goes into making up a rivalry that, in my opinion, is without competition. You talk about the very best in college football anyway. Where did that one Saturday sort of stack up for you, Cecil?
Well, it was certainly some things happen that you don't usually see happen, and I thought both teams played extremely hard, and that's what makes a great game. So, neither team quit. Both teams got behind and came back and fought back, and right down to the last play. So, 85 remains a great game. It wasn't. You go back to the Bama punt game in '72, and it wasn't fluky in the way that one was. Although there were certainly some unusual things, but highly entertaining. Kickoff returns, interception returns, big pass plays. So it was certainly a classic Iron Bowl game, if that's the way that you like to rank things. I don't know that it was quite the level of players and the quality of game that there was in '85, but I'm sure that other people have other opinions. So that's just my analysis of it.
It depends on which side you're on and how those games go. And so certainly from the Alabama perspective, I think we both realize the feeling among that fan base was mostly about opportunities lost, plural, throughout the course of Saturday's game. I know you wrote about this after the game, the discipline aspect of this team and mistakes related to things like that. 12 games into the regular season, we had talked a lot about youth and inexperience and how unprecedented it was at levels unlike any we've seen in really Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama. That being said, is there a point, Cecil, where some fundamental things, some standards, even with the inexperience that you're 12 games into the season, that maybe some things still shouldn't be happening that happened once again in that game Saturday?
I think to some degree. First of all, when you use the word discipline, it can mean different things. I don't think they've had bad characters off the team. So I don't think that's the situation. It's not been when you talk about some of the, for instance, Miami teams of the past having discipline problems, you mean something different. We're talking about on the field,
right?
And some of that is that your leadership gets taken away. In this case, by injuries, and those are part of football, and those happen. But so many guys who were leaders or potential leaders, your quarterback, obviously, Dylan Moses, obviously. I hadn't even thought, we talked about the kicker being out, being a backup kicker in Joseph Bullis, who would have been behind Will Reichert. I had not even remembered. This is how many injuries you're dealing with, because DJ Dale was out and so forth. I think Miller Forrestall was the guy who was developing into that kind of leader. And he gets knocked out towards the end of the season. So some of it's just related to that. Some of it probably related to what you can demand and what you can get out of players these days, even as opposed to 10 years ago. Some of it probably related to the way that they played. I think early in the year, I think when you had Tua and those wide receivers, you were a threat to put up 60 points on anybody, including had they been healthy against LSU or against Auburn. And maybe the mindset for other guys at other positions was that they didn't have to be at that 100% mark on every play, because Tua could throw it to Ruggs or throw it to Waddle, and that Devontae, and that'd cover it. They'd take care of it, wipe it away. Like in basketball, 3-point shooting pardons all sins. And if you can score at a rate that the other team can't score, everything else is going to work out fine. But when you get into games that are one-score games, those little things get magnified. And suddenly you have to be doing those little things and not screwing those little things up. And I think that got Alabama both times. And that's not necessarily, it's nobody's fault. It's certainly not relative to his injury. I just think you have built a team that could just score their way past their mistakes until they got up against LSU and Auburn. And then suddenly, if you're not doing the right thing on every play, it costs you, it hurts you, and you don't necessarily have that eraser in there to just wipe it away.
Did Mac Jones show enough, Cecil, to think that he very realistically could be the guy behind center for Alabama in 2020, assuming Tua has played his last game for the Alabama Crimson Tide, or did he maybe just more so put one hand perhaps on that job, and with Bryce Young coming in and what Alabama has in Talia and Paul Tyson, there's still going to be a pretty wide open competition.
Yeah, I think there'll be a competition in the spring. With that said, I don't know what more you could ask of Mac, and people will immediately say, well, don't throw 2 pick six. Hey, the first pick six was a bad throw. He'd be the first one to tell you that. Overthrew the guy. The second one, he's got a rusher in his face. In a perfect world, the guy, Tom Brady, that's got 10 years of experience, guy with that kind of stuff, probably throws that ball over Najee's head where it can't be intercepted just instinctually. Mac got rid of it, bounces off a guy's back, and lands in a guy's hands. That definitely a mistake. And he goes 100 yards with it. He doesn't immediately get tackled or take a touchback. So credit Auburn for making that play, but I'm not going to kill Mac on that particular throw.
No, yeah,
and moved him the rest of the time. Is he 2? No, he's not 2. 2 is probably the best quarterback. With all due respect to Joe Burrow, the best deep ball all over the field quarterback in college football when he was healthy. So you don't have that just coming off the bench. So I thought Mac played. I don't know what else people could have expected out of Mac. I really don't. Got him the lead in the fourth quarter, and your defense needs to get a stop. That's the truth about it.
Bottom line, and converted the 4th and 7 there on the final drive.
And got him into field goal range, and field goal got missed.
And
so
really
I don't know how you
benefit from great field position the whole game. When you looked at it, I think Alabama's average start was its own 32. Auburn was out at its own 43. Now, of course, you had the Jalen Waddle kickoff return for a touchdown, but other than that,
there's 100 yards that doesn't get factored in there,
right?
But still, no, I don't know what more anybody could have in terms of reasonable expectations for a guy making his third. Normally nobody's making their third start in that environment because you've got a full season under your belt. Normal circumstances. Mac's third start.
In terms of a bowl game, Cecil, what's a reasonable expectation, in your opinion, of guys that will play, guys with immediate NFL futures that might not? This is new territory, obviously, for Nick Saban in this program.
It is. You. First of all, it's a personal decision for those guys, and I think if a guy is a first rounder, he certainly has the right to determine what's best for his own future. Some guys may want to play. Some guys may say, "I don't think I think I've given enough, and don't want to risk my financial future, my family's financial future, for a game that will end up." I mean, you want to win. They're all competitors, but end up being the difference in finishing 6th in some poll and 12th in some poll. I just don't know how much pressure you put on first-round talent guys to get out there if they're not comfortable with it in this day and age. And I would say that's true for Derek Brown at Auburn, or a half dozen other guys that you could name. I don't know what benefit necessarily there is to the bowl game for them. A lot of guys, some guys at Georgia, if Georgia doesn't win the championship game, be in the same boat.
Saw that with the Bulldogs last year.
Excuse me?
We saw that with Georgia in the Sugar Bowl last year.
Saw it with LSU. Devin White didn't play, correct? Mm-hmm. And I think that's right. I know Fournette did.
Christian McCaffrey going back, yeah.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey. So it's just I guess that if you're old school, you don't like it, but that's the way college football is now, and just something that will have to be dealt with. Of course, it won't be a decision, unfortunately, for Tua, but for the other first, second guys who think they've done enough, it's their decision. I think there are some guys who could help themselves. Mm-hmm. I think a Raekwon Davis could help himself. I think Najee Harris, although he's done a tremendous amount to help himself in the last month, could help himself. But they've got to make those.
Talking with Cecil Hurt, sports editor and columnist for the Tuscaloosa News on Southern Fried Sports, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier. Cecil, we know that the focus for Nick Saban and that staff shifts immediately to recruiting. Saban and his assistants out on the recruiting trail, working out west today, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think they're double checking on Bryce Young, some other guys.
Darnell Washington, the 5-star athlete out in Las Vegas, also on that docket apparently. But with with where this program is heading into an off season that, again, foreign to this program since really 2014, the introspection part of it that Nick Saban will go through, that he does each and every year, does that get moved up now in terms of everything, roster, staff, everything that goes into this program? Or again, I understand the early signing period coming up, that takes priority. But how do you think that proceeds for Nick Saban with the college football playoff out of the picture?
Well, I think more or less accelerated a little bit. So it's again, this will be the first time that the early football signing period could be interpreted as coming at an advantageous time for Alabama. It starts on the 19th, by the way. So 2 weeks from Wednesday, I guess. And in the past, Alabama's been involved in bowl prep, in national championship type prep. There'll be some bowl prep. So I think he'll evaluate. They'll look at who signed, and don't think they'll do anything before the signing period closes. So I think after that, you may start to get before the actual bowl game. The calendar for all that is, first, find out on Sunday. Have some pretty strong idea Saturday, but find out on Sunday what the bowl destination will be. Because it depends on LSU and Georgia, whether the SEC gets one team or two into the playoff. So then you know where you're going. You're playing the guys who break down film and so forth, although I'm sure they're looking at a lot of potential opponents right now, but they can focus that on one. Then you've got a little less than 2 weeks before you're signing guys and getting back to practice prep, bowl prep. And there'll be an evaluation through all that, I think.
Cecil, as we let you go here, I got to get a quick review from you on The Irishman, Marty Scorsese's latest epic with Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel. I mean, it was almost a reunion of sorts, it felt like, from some of the great flicks. Although we got Pacino in that mix with De Niro and Pesci for a change, right?
First time that he's been in that kind of. He's worked with De Niro before. He's worked with Pesci before, but Heat, one of the underrated classic movies with De Niro and Pacino and Heat. Of course, The Godfather, but they were never in The Godfather together. They were never in the same. Obviously, they're both stars of Godfather 2, but the way that story was structured, there's no De Niro Pacino scene together, different time frames. So I thought it was great. I thought Pesci was great. I thought he was really outstanding because you think of him as the wild, crazy, guy from Goodfellas and Casino and as Tommy and those movies, or the crazy bad guy in Home Alone or so forth. But he's very understated performance, very magisterial performance. Thought he was great. It's a long running time, 3:20, I guess, on the running time.
Yeah. Probably
if it had been a theatrical only and they had said, Marty, we got to get it to 2:45, he could have done that. I don't know that anybody dictates any terms to Scorsese at this point, but, if you do it in a big studio and they want more screenings in a day, that's why shorter is better. He probably could have gotten that story down to 2:45 without changing the narrative at all. It went off not too far off, but tangentially. Crazy Joe Gallo scenes, you could have really cut that particularly if you go in there not knowing anything about Crazy Joe Gallo. You know, it was almost just a sort of a name drop situation. The movie narrative would have made perfect sense whether that scene's in there or not, but they're fun scenes, interesting scenes. So I thought it was really good. It's a really different way of making a movie than it once was. I don't know where you could possibly go with that group of actors from here. I mean, this has to be the grand finale.
That had a sense of finality to it. No doubt.
Particularly the way the last hour, which was very strong, but particularly the way that went.
Yeah.
Very strong in a low-key way, not in a Goodfellas, everybody gets whacked kind of way. Not to give any spoilers, but in a low-key way. There's really, there's some typical mob mayhem along the way, but now it's not a whack fest like Goodfellas.
No.
So very different tone in that way.
Well, there you go. Cecil Hurt, Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com.
Recommend to everybody who's got access to Netflix to watch it. Even if you break it into, even if you say I'm in a mini series, break it into 3 parts. You'll be fine. Just pause it. Watch for an hour. Pause it at what seems like a natural scene break. Watch for another hour. Same way you would The Sopranos, and it holds up.
It does. Well, Cecil, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Okay, see you soon.